Rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful, and may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and the purified members of his household and progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Today we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad al-Sadeq, السلام, our sixth Imam, and a name which symbolizes Islamic knowledge taken in the large sense. Islamic knowledge that goes beyond just the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is the man to whom the other schools of Islamic law refer to. Al-Hanafiya and al-Malikiyya, they refer to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam because he was the teacher of their imams. The schools of Islamic theology, we have mentioned in the past schools like al-Mu'tazila, for instance. Al-Wasil ibn Ata was one of the founders of a school of belief and theology referred to as i'tizal or al-Mu'tazila. He was a student of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. The schools of Sufism, they go back to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and many of his students, Anwan al-Basri and others, were all the founders of schools and approaches and methods in tasawwuf and esoteric knowledge and mystical knowledge. All of them go back to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. It's not an exaggeration to say that along with the Holy Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq was one of the founders of Islam and one of those who put in place all of Islamic knowledge in today's world. Wherever you find truthful Islamic knowledge, and we'll explain that in a second, all of that knowledge came from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Oftentimes Imam al-Sadiq is referred to as the founder of the Ja'fari school, which usually is a reference to the fiqh, what we refer to today as al-fiqh, law, Islamic law. So they say that in the Shia madhab, in the Shia worldview and madhab or school of thought, the fiqh component of it comes from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and his role is often limited to that, the founder of the Ja'fari school, in reference to Islamic law of Shi'ism. And while there is great pride for us to have our name associated to a school of thought that carries the name of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, we don't think that this is an accurate way of presenting the role of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. First, for what we just said, that the Imam did not contribute just to one madhab or one school of thought. And we're going to get to a lot more detail, inshallah, in the next few minutes. But secondly, when we look at the role of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, what we believe is that the Imam simply took out the knowledge of the Holy Prophet and the knowledge of Imam Ali alayhi salam and presented it to the world. A knowledge that the majority of the people had lost access to. What Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was presenting to the world, the Ja'fari madhab or the Ja'fari school of thought, is none other than what we consider to be the true version of Islam, the true teachings of the Holy Prophet and the Holy Quran. The Imam was not coming up with something different that was in any way, shape or form an exception, for instance, to the teachings of Imam al-Sadiq, to Imam al-Baqir, his father, or Imam al-Sajjad, or Imam al-Husayn, or Imam al-Hasan, or Imam Ali, or the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's nothing distinctive in the substance and the teaching of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And yet, as we said, the school of thought to which we belong is now named after him. So what is distinctive about Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam? It is not that the Imam had more knowledge than any of the other Imams. It is that the life and the circumstances of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam allowed him to seize opportunities that were not available to the other Imams. And inshallah, we're going to explain a little bit of that. And so, the distinction of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam is simply that the circumstances of his life were different, and so they allowed him to spread the knowledge of the Holy Prophet and to establish foundations and ways of dealing with knowledge and truth, inshallah, that we'll talk about, that today we may refer to as the school or the approach of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. The first point we can mention very quickly has to do with the life and the imamah of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. Imam al-Sadeq was born either year 81 or 83 Hijriya, 83 being the more popular opinion. And he passed away, he was martyred, as we shall mention inshallah, year 148, which means that he was either 65 or 67 years old when he passed away. This makes him the Imam with the longest lifetime, the Imam who lived the longest in this world. So that's already contributing to the opportunities granted to the Imam. And the period of his Imamah was between, depending on which date we take, between 34 and 36 years of Imamah. Between the time that Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam passes away, this is when an Imam becomes an Imam officially, is when the previous Imam passes away. There can only be one Imam at a time, the authority of God on earth. After Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam passes away, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, so Imam al-Sadiq lived at the time of Imam al-Sajjad. He lived with Imam al-Sajjad, his grandfather, between 12 and 14 years. And then he lived with his father, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, who was also there with Imam al-Sajjad, up to about 31 years of age, and that's when he became the Imam. And as we said, he was martyred at about 65 or 67 years old, which means that his Imam lasted about 34 to 36 years. So it is either one, if not the longest Imamah, certainly one of the longest. We have a few Imams who were with long Imamat, long missions, with long divine missions. One of them, for instance, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, but unfortunately he spent most of that time in jail, in prison. People did not have access to him. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was also jailed. Inshallah we'll mention that, but the circumstances were much easier for him because he was not jailed in the way that Imam al-Kadhim, for instance, alayhi salam, was jailed. So in any case, that's one. But it was not just the length of his life and the length of his Imamah. There was also the political circumstances of his time. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he lived at the very end of the Umayyad dynasty, the dynasty of Bani Umayyah, the rule of Bani Umayyah, and at the very beginning of the rule of Bani al-Abbas. From the time that he lived, from the time that he was born to the time that he passes away, so Bani Umayyah lost their power to the Abbasids in year 132. The Imam alayhi salam lived through 10 khulafa from Bani Umayyah. In 50 years, from the time he was born until Bani al-Abbas, they take over, the Imam was 49, let's say 50. 49 years old or 50 years old during that time, Bani Umayyah went through 10 khulafa. 5 of them, the last 5, the Imam was an Imam. 18 years. So you see how quickly the khulafa were changing? This is not normal. This means that there's a lot of instability in society. It means there's a lot of civil wars and tensions and family feuds and people trying to take over and people trying to kill people and so on and so forth. The Imam lived through all of that, and then he lived through the beginning of Bani al-Abbas. So initially al-Saffah was the first of the Khulafa of Bani al-Abbas. He lasted 4 to 5 years and then he died of smallpox. And then his brother, he appointed his brother al-Mansour, Mansour al-Dawaniqi, and he lasted for over 20 years. He was the one who martyred the Imam. So the Imam lived 18 years under the rule of Bani Umayyah. As we said, 5 different Khulafa. And then 2 Khulafa from Bani al-Abbas. Overall, when you look at this, you can tell right away that he is living in a time of huge political turnover and turmoil. This meant that, to the extent possible we can say this, they were more preoccupied with their own rule and ruling over their own kingdom and their own dynasty than dealing with Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. They were not so preoccupied with the Imam that they had their full attention on him all the time, like the other Imams had with their rulers. And this is what allowed Imam al-Baqir, his father, and even to a greater extent himself, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, from being able to focus on religion. And this was only possible because the Imam kept making it clear that he did not want to be associated or have anything to do with politics. During the time of Bani Umayyah, there were at least, inshallah one day we'll go into a lot more detail about these, there were at least 3 very big movements that were considered potentially movements where the Imam could directly be working. 3 different movements where people were coming to the Imam and asking him to be openly their leader, telling the Imam that they're paying their allegiance to the Imam if only the Imam would accept to be their leader. And in every case, the Imam would distance himself, at least publicly, the Imam would distance himself completely from all 3 movements. The first movement was the movement of Zayd ibn Ali, the son of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. And this was a pious man and a righteous man, and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam loved him dearly. And there is praise of Zayd ibn Ali in the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Kadhim. They praise Zayd ibn Ali and his sons and the entire group that were with him. This was one movement that was against Bani Umayyah at that time. And they wanted the support of the Imam, and he would not be openly supportive in the sense that anyone could come back and say the Imam is part of that rebellion and that part of that uprising against Bani Umayyah. So the Imam is not giving any pretext for that. The second group, they were kind of 2 groups together, but we don't have time to go to the details. There were kind of 2 groups together, the descendants of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and the descendants of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. So they were all Alawiyah. They were all Sada, all sons of Imam Ali alayhi salam, but some of them from Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah and some of them from Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Their movement was not as good as the movement of Zayd. Okay, and they are not as praised as Zayd was and his movement were. But they were still righteous people trying to uprise and fight the oppression of Bani Umayyah in their time. And Bani al-Abbas knew them very well, these Hassaniyah, because they had given their allegiance to them to fight Bani Umayyah. Bani al-Abbas, al-Saffah, who became the first Khalifa of Bani al-Abbas, and his brother al-Mansour, al-Dawaniqi, they had given their allegiance to Muhammad the Nafs al-Zakiyya, ibn Abdullah, ibn al-Hasan al-Muthanna, ibn al-Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. They had given their allegiance to him, their bay'ah to him, that he would be their Khalifa when they overthrow Bani Umayyah. But as soon as Bani al-Abbas took over, the first thing that they did, they had nothing to do with the group of Zayd and his people, because Bani Umayyah had exterminated them all. And inshallah one day we go into more details what they did to them. But who was left? The Hassaniyah, the movement of Abdullah, the father of Nafs al-Zakiyya and Nafs al-Zakiyya, the Hassaniyah. And these were the descendants of Imam al-Hasan. And who was left? The descendants of Imam al-Husayn, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Those were still there, except that the Hassaniyah were openly fighting and they were still carrying their swords. So the Abbasiyin, they decided that they would exterminate the Hassaniyah entirely. And the Hassaniyah ran and they went into all sorts of different countries. They made it as far as India and beyond and Pakistan, and they went to Africa, and they were all caught and they were all killed during that time. Because they knew that they were very dangerous and they knew that they had betrayed their allegiance to them. Bani al-Abbas came to power, inshallah we'll get back to this in more detail. They came to power by raising the banners that were carried by Zayd ibn Ali and by the Hassaniyah. All of it saying, Ya li Tharat al-Husayn, seeking vengeance for the blood of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, and to bring the right to its right people, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. But then Bani al-Abbas, through their trickery and their duping of the people, they presented themselves as being Ahlul Bayt because their father, their great father, is the uncle of the Holy Prophet, and so they are also the family of the Prophet, and they were able to do it that way. And then there was another movement by a man, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, who was basically the leader of the Abbasid movement in Persia, who also came to Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam, and who tried to have the Imam work with him. And the Imam refused. And this was before and as well as after the time of the Umayyad, Bani Umayyah, to fight them, and the Imam refused. He said, the time is not my time, and the man is not of my men. The Imam does not associate with people like that, and inshallah one day we'll explain the relationship of the Imam with each one of these different groups and how he balanced and maneuvered all these contradictory forces in that society. But the key from all of this is that while all of this is going on, and all these people are seeking the support and loyalty and allegiance of the Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, the Imam always comes back to the point that he is not interested in any political position, that his only interest is in making the people see the truth, know the truth, and follow it. He's only interested in religion and spirituality and teaching people those things, so that there is no pretext. And that's why he was tolerated during the time of Bani Umayyah. They did not kill him right away. They imprisoned him, especially Husham and others. He was imprisoned, he was summoned, he was harassed, but not to the point of being killed. And they were, as we said, too preoccupied with their own civil wars and their own internal tensions, so they left the Imam be. And the Imam continued with the same approach with Bani al-Abbas. And so, if we move to when Bani al-Abbas took over, as we said, they had a special interest, Bani al-Abbas, in getting rid of the Hassaniyah, because they knew that the Hassaniyah were a real threat. They were seeking to rule. And then al-Husayniyah, or the sons of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, because they could see the people gather around the Imam. And this began right from the beginning. So when the Abbasids come to power, as we said, the Imam is about 49, 50 years old, the Imam goes to Kufa. He's living in Medina, he goes to Kufa, and he spends 2 years in Kufa at that time. One of the things that the Imam insists on when he goes to Kufa is to explain to the Shia to stay away from the rule of the Abbasiyin. The Shia and the followers of the Imam would come to him and they would ask the Imam to find jobs for them in the government, in the Abbasid government. And the Imam would refuse. And a lot of them thought that the Imam maybe thinks that I'm going to be an oppressor if I am in positions of power, or I am incompetent. They would not understanding the point of the Imam. The point that the Imam was making is to try to tell the people that it is not because Bani al-Abbas may look like they are cousins that suddenly you consider them to be good and that you can just follow blindly. They are as bad as Bani Umayyah, if not worse than them. And in fact, they proved to be worse than Bani Umayyah. They killed so many of Bani Umayyah, they decided that they would exterminate anyone who was close or far, directly or indirectly related to Bani Umayyah. The Imam would tell them, he would talk to the Khulafa of Bani al-Abbas and he would tell them they should stop killing the Umayyads. He would tell them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put you in the position of power. It's better for you to forgive. There is no point in killing in mass the Umayyads. You can either forgive, or if you find someone who has committed a crime, deal with them. Otherwise, that's it, you let them go. But they wouldn't. They wanted to exterminate everyone that they could find. And they did this with every other group, including the Imams and including their sons and their Shia. If anyone displayed any type of resistance, now or perhaps potentially in the future, Bani al-Abbas's policy was that they would get rid of them right away. As soon as al-Saffah became the Khalifa, one of the first things that his brother would tell him is to get rid of the man who was basically their military commander in Persia, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani that we just mentioned. He would tell him, kill him right away, don't wait. This guy one day will become a threat to us, a risk to us. He has men, he has power, he can fight, get rid of them right away. This was the policy of Bani al-Abbas. And so as we said, the Imam went to Al-Kufa, and it's maybe not always very well known that the Imam spent 2 years in Kufa when initially Bani al-Abbas came to power. And as we said, that was one of the things that the Imam was trying to establish, to make sure that the people knew that the Imam is not giving a blank check or saying that he agrees with the policies or the dynasty of Bani al-Abbas just because there is some blood relation, as Bani al-Abbas are propagating and explaining to the people. Okay, and so as we said, the Imam insisted that he had no political role to play, and he instead started to focus on other things. The Imam distanced himself from the political scene so that he carves out a space for himself so that he can focus, as we said, on the religious and on the spiritual. The first thing that he did was that he started to focus on spreading the hadith of the Holy Prophet. And this is a topic that we've talked about in the past. Every time we talk about it from a different angle. We said that there was an official ban after the passing away of the Holy Prophet. There was an official ban by the Khilafah, the Islamic Khalifa of the time, right after the Holy Prophet, from Abu Bakr all the way until year 99 Hijriya. There was an official ban by the first Khulafa and then Bani Umayyah, all the way to year 99 Hijriya. For 90 years, for 89 years or 90 years, no one was allowed to write a single hadith of the Holy Prophet or repeat a hadith of the Holy Prophet unless you were given explicit permission from the government of the day. And that's why there were people like Abu Hurairah, Aisha and others. They were explicitly given a permission from the rulers that these are the only people who are allowed to speak, to recite, to say, to utter the words attributed to the Holy Prophet. And of course the main excuse for this was initially that people are going to get confused, and the same thing that happened to the books of the Jews and the Christians will happen to the Muslims. They will no longer be able to distinguish between the sayings of the Holy Prophet and the Holy Quran. And therefore we are going to ban anyone from repeating the words of the Holy Prophet, and they would find the books, any place, pieces of leather, bone, wood, where the sayings of the Holy Prophet were written, and they would burn them. And this lasted until year 99. So you have the first generation of the companions of the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet is long dead now. The first generation is long gone. The second generation is long gone. There is no more anyone in those people in year 99, or even after, when we said Imam al-Sadeq alayhi becomes the Imam, where there is anyone who would have heard directly from the Holy Prophet. And that's why it's such an exception to talk, for instance, about Jabir bin Abdullah, because he was such an exception. He's a man who lived for a very long age after the Holy Prophet. But generally speaking, in that society, there is no more anyone who carries the hadith of the Holy Prophet. And so Imam al-Sadeq played that role. And he would find any opportunity and any excuse to teach the sayings of the Holy Prophet. And of course, every time he would say something, he would say, this is what the Holy Prophet says. Or this is what my father says, who, when he speaks, he repeats the words of Ali ibn al-Husayn, who repeats the words of al-Husayn bin Ali, who repeats the words of the Imam Ali alayhi salam, who repeats the words of the Holy Prophet. So that he's saying, none of these words come from me. This is all the words of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he spent time re-establishing truths, religious truths about God, about the attributes of God, about the free will and divine justice, about the heretic movements that were starting, the materialist movements, the Zanadiqa that were starting in the Muslim world. They would sit in the Kaaba and they would make a project that they would show how the Holy Quran is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was happening at the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. All those different types of distortions, the ghulat came up. Those are people who worshipped the Imams and considered the Imams gods. Al-Khattabiyya and others, they emerged during those times. The Imam was fighting all of those different groups through the hadith of the Holy Prophet first, and then secondly, the Imam started to focus on establishing the foundations of his followers. So the ahadith, there is a man by the name of al-Hasan bin Ali al-Washa'. This is a man who lived later, not in the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that we have a narration They say there is a man who came from Persia looking for him because he was a carrier, a knowledgeable man, a scholar of ahadith. So he came to him from Persia, he wanted to learn ahadith from him. So he says he got to me and he started asking me, and he wanted to see the ahadith. I gave it to him. He told me, I want you to give me an ijazah to say that I actually read all of these to you so that I can transcribe them. He told them, what, can't it wait? You know, it's like very rushed, everything you want to do. You just got here from your travel. Take the time, come back to me later. Tell him, I don't know what will happen. I might die, something might happen, I might not be able to see you. I've come from a long distance. And so this man, he says, if I had known that there are people who are so excited and so interested in these ahadith, I would have learned a lot more of them, many more of them. For I swear, and this is where he says, I swear that in this mosque, and he was talking about the mosque of Al-Kufa, I swear that in this mosque alone, I have met 900 scholars, all of them saying that I have heard Jafar ibn Muhammad say so and so. So this is 900 scholars in the masjid of Al-Kufa. All of them reporting from Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. How long did Imam al-Sadeq spend in Kufa? We said 2 years. And that's why if you read the biography of the Imam from other scholars, from other schools of thought, they say, many of them say, that Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam had no less than 4,000 scholars in al-Madinah al-Munawwara. This is where everybody came to learn knowledge. And they would not come to the Imam to learn knowledge only, let's say, in fiqh, or in Quran, or in kalam. The knowledge of the Imam was universal. And he would teach in a public way. He would not keep his teachings just to a little group of people. He taught so that anyone who's interested, his door is open. He would sit in the mosque of the Holy Prophet. Imam al-Sadeq started teaching in the lifetime of Imam al-Baqir. When his father was still alive, the Imam al-Sadeq was teaching in the mosque of the Holy Prophet in Medina. But his popularity grew much more afterwards. There's a man who says when the Imam came to Kufa, he says, I went to visit Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in Kufa, and I could not see him until 4 days later. So he waited his turn. This is how crowded the house of the Imam was, and how long it takes for someone to see the Imam, to be able to talk to the Imam finally. And so after this, after a while, al-saffah, when he saw that this is happening, and this is how people gather around Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he put the Imam under house arrest. And so the Imam stayed under house arrest, and then he asked al-saffah to give him permission to go back to his people. And Saffah told him, no, why don't you stay here? He said, no, it's better for me, and there's a whole story around that. The Imam said, it's better for me just to go back to my people and to take care of my family and my people. And so he went back to al-Madinah, where he went back to teaching and so on and so forth. This was at the very beginning of the Abbasid dynasty. And so when the Imam continued with teaching, there is the universal teaching of the people, but then he took great care of his own companions. We have this very famous narration. There are many, many others, but this is one that shows how the Imam basically created specialization in his companions. So he would teach them all the foundations, but then depending on their interest, their talents, their competence, some of them would specialize in specific fields. We have a man who came from Sham. He said, I traveled and I came just to meet and debate with Ja'far ibn Muhammad because they say you are knowledgeable, he tells him. The Imam tells him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me knowledge. What do you want to talk about? He tells him, I want to talk about the issues of imamah and khilafah and leadership. He tells him, in that case, talk to Hisham ibn al-Hakam. He's like, no, I came here to talk to you. The Imam said, if you beat Hisham, you have beaten me. Okay, so on one side, you can see the type of confidence that the Imam puts in his followers. That they must know and feel that the Imam has taught them enough. The truth is very clear to them, that they are ready to confront anyone who debates. To the point where the Imam, in all of his rank and status, tells people, if you beat him, you have beaten me. Go ahead and debate. And I'm not going to tell you, the whole story is available in the books. Maybe another day we'll go through it. How Hisham ibn al-Hakam debated the man. And how many hadith we have where the Imam, for instance, kisses Hisham between his eyes. And he tells him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you and you carry the knowledge well, and so on and so forth. I'll add one little detail about Hisham and then I'll continue with the hadith. If you go back to the biography of Hisham, we are told at that time, Hisham ibn al-Hakam, his beard had not grown yet. This is how young Hisham ibn al-Hakam was at that time. When we say the companions of the Imam, this is a lesson to all of us, to myself and to others. Where are we spending our youth? Hisham had time to stick to Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam and to learn from him to the point where the Imam says, if you beat this man, you beat me. And he says his beard had not fully grown yet. لم ينبت عارضه بعد. He didn't have a full beard, he had the beginning of a beard. And then the Imam says, I want to talk to you about other issues. He says, what? He says, I want to debate you in the Holy Quran and in language. So he tells him, turn to Humran ibn A'yun. And then he tells him, I want to debate you in fiqh, in Islamic law. And if you go back to our books, by the way, this is all mentioned, what they debated and how they answered the Imam, this man. And so when he turned to the issues of fiqh, he turned to Zurara, the brother, Humran. They were brothers. Humran and Zurara were brothers. Humran was alive. He was a companion of Imam al-Sajjad, Imam al-Baqir, and Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He was older at that time. And Zurara, we have narrations in which Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, the pillars of earth are 4. And he mentions Zurara as one of them. He says there are 4 people in his time who are basically the carriers of knowledge. One of them is Zurara. We have many narrations where the Imams give us indications and direction, and they point us to which of their companions are the ones. If we want to go back and consider them trustworthy and reliable, who are they? See? And then we have, beyond all of this, we have the famous person, Jafar ibn Hayyan, that in today's world, of course, we put aside the made-up claims of Orientalists and others who say that there is no such person who ever existed in reality. They were just different people, all of them writing under a pseudonym of Jafar ibn Hayyan. It's impossible that so much knowledge was in one person. So advanced over his time. These were all created and written, fabricated later, because they talk about astronomy and they talk about chemistry. And for those of you who have studied chemistry, you understand the different types of chemical reactions. All of it is described in the writings of Jafar ibn Hayyan. In his exchanges, he would write letters to the Imam and the Imam would answer them. Jafar ibn Hayyan left 3,000 works. Some of them are very short, some of them are longer, and many letters. No one knows many of them where they are. They're sitting in the museums and in universities, transcribed in the universities of Europe, difficult to find, in which Jafar ibn Hayyan has written all these things that he has learned from Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. So this is where you see the breadth of the Imam and to what extent it go beyond the Islamic law and Islamic theology and so on and so forth, and how he was raising his own people and his own companions. Shaykh al-Tusi alayhi, when he talks about the companions, he said the companions of the Imams, these companions, Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq specifically, they were not just transmitters of hadith, they were fuqaha. And that word basically means, in today's language, we would say they are a mujtahid. These are people that the Imam gave so much knowledge and competence that they are able to extract the solutions and the answers from the religious texts without having to rely to go back to someone and learn from them. So the Imam is teaching his people and teaching his community how to get to a level where they are independent in their knowledge, but on condition that you have the right knowledge and the right tools. The Imam alayhi salam, and we can't go into all the details now, inshallah, throughout the series on the Islamic answer, life being the Islamic answer, we'll go back to some of the writings of the Imam that we have today. They are attributed to the Imam. There's 2 pieces of writing, specifically maybe in the part where we talk about knowledge. He left a writing called al-Ihlilja, which is a writing that the Imam left, he wrote himself, a letter. And in the second one, we have Tawheed al-Mufaddal, which is a dictation. One of the companions of the Imam, al-Mufaddal bin Umar, would come to the Imam in 4 sessions, and the Imam would dictate and al-Mufaddal would write. And these 4 sessions are now available. I believe they are even translated. Anyone can read them. It's called Tawheed al-Mufaddal. where the Imam basically explains the proof for the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because those were the issues of his day. There are so many heretics and so many people fighting belief in Allah that the Imam is teaching his companions how to argue the existence of God. So he explains how the human being is created, one organ at a time. And then he explains how earth is created, the mountains and the winds and the water. He explains why animals are different. He explains how the plants are different and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them so that we can extract remedies from them. And then the fourth session, he explains the different philosophies and theological and more abstract thoughts and why they are wrong. At that time, there were a lot of Indian thinkers and philosophies that had integrated or infiltrated into the Islamic world. The Imam was replying to many of them, and you have all these different schools of thought that we talked about. The Imam talks about all of this. And then very quickly, so that we don't take too long, the Imam established very specific things with his own community. So we go through them quickly so that we don't spend too much time. The first one is that the Imam wanted to make sure that anyone who follows the Imam, now we're not talking about in general all the knowledge that the Imam was spreading, we are talking about those that the Imam considered his Shia. And inshallah, one day we will also have an opportunity, we'll create maybe a series where we go through the letter that the Imam wrote to teach the Shia how to be Shia. Inshallah, we'll get back to that one day. But in general, first of all, the Imam wanted the Shia to have solid foundations in their beliefs. He spent a lot of time on the issues of God, the attributes of God, the issues of free will, divine justice, the issues of the existence of God, the necessity for religion, the afterlife, nubuwah, the Quran, and the imamah, the role of the imamah. That's one. Two, the Imam wanted to clearly show his Shia how to use the instruments that they have properly. Because in the other schools of thought, you are starting to see people who rely on reason too much, on analogy. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, and I don't know what He says about that, then because of what I know here, I can apply it here. It looks like it's the same. This is qiyas. The Imam was fighting this qiyas. So he was teaching his people, as we go, if you go back through the debates, for instance, of Hisham and others, you see that there is a very high, sophisticated use of logic, or in today's thinking, critical thinking, philosophical thinking. But it has to be done properly, so that you don't fall into fallacies, into problems, into mistakes. So the Imam was showing his people, when do you rely on scripture and when do you rely on reason, so that you don't fall into the same mistakes as others. The third point, the Imam was creating social ties between his people. And we've talked about this in the past. The Imam made sure that anyone who says, I am of the followers of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam, you feel like you are part of a community. That there are fraternal ties. You feel that you have brothers and sisters taking care of you, who have your back and you have their back. The Imam spent a lot of energy on this. We've already told maybe a couple of times the story of how the Imam would make sure that if anyone was having problems with someone else because of money, the Imam was willing to pay anyone the money so that the problems don't persist between them. And he would teach his followers and his companions to do that. Look for people who are having money issues and pay them, so that the money issues disappear and people in the community don't focus on their tensions and their problems internally. And we have another narration in which Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam, one of his people came to him to visit him, and the Imam was not happy with him. And so the man tells the Imam, what is wrong? What have I done? And the Imam tells him, لِمَ تَسْتَخِفُّونَ بِأَئِمَّتِكُمْ? Why do you belittle your Imams? You underestimate, you disrespect your Imams. وَلَا تَرْعَوْنَ حُرْمَتَهُمْ? And you do not respect their sanctity or their holiness. Your Imams, he tells him. So the Imam said, me? That man said, me? I do that? I would never do that. He's like, yes, and you have specifically done it. So the Imam tells him, how? When have I disobeyed my Imam or disrespected the Imam? So the Imam tells him, you remember when you were in so and so place? He tells him when you were in Jafar. Jafar is a place where, inshallah, we all go when we perform the Hajj. Remember when you were in Juhfa and there's one of our companions who came seeking your help? He tells him, yeah, I remember. The Imam tells him, you ignored him. And you could have helped him and you did not help him. And if you could have helped him and you did not, then you have not helped us. And if you did not help him, you are belittling us. You see the importance that the Imam is giving to the social ties. This man is not disobeying the instructions of the Imam on how to pray and how to fast. He's telling him one of our Shia was in need of help and you did not help him, and you knew he came to you asking for your help. It is as though, the Imam tells him, it is as though I came to you asking for help and you did not help him. So you do not therefore respect our holiness, the Imam tells him. So this is how the Imam establishes the fraternal ties in the members of the community. And this is extremely important in a time and in a place where the community is a minority. They are weak in an ocean of enemies who are looking for any opportunity to take them over and to get rid of them and to vanquish them and erase them. And the only way you can survive is by staying together and staying united. So the Imam spent a lot of time on this. I'm not going to go through all of the details. He sent clear, explicit instructions, as we said, to his followers, that they must be at all times the best of people. And that's all I'm going to say about that. There is no time to go into the details. He focused on two more things that inshallah one day we'll explain in more detail. He applied and showed the people how to apply the notions of taqiyya and the notion of secrecy. Not everything that you know needs to be said. There's a time to say something and a time not to say it. And how much you say and to whom you say and how you say matters. This is very clear in the teachings of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. And this is extremely important for our brothers and sisters who are always looking for ways to be activists. The Imam says, act, but act in a diligent way, in a smart way, in a strategic way. Understand your surrounding and be effective. It's not just blind jumping into situations and do whatever you think is, this is in a matter of reaction that you do. When you act with patience and with reason and with critical thought. And inshallah we'll talk about all of this. Then very quickly, he also insisted on the attachment of the Shia to Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. The majority of the ziyarat that we have of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam come to us from Imam al-Sadeq. He insisted on the attachment of the Shia to Imam al-Mahdi ajjallahu farajah. He would mention him often, he would talk about him and ensure that the idea and the belief of Imam al-Mahdi was alive and well in the hearts of the Shia in his own time, and he was the sixth Imam, talking about the future, so that this is carried throughout the generations to our time, inshallah. And the last point was that he insisted on the Imam after him being his son, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and one day we'll explain in a lot more detail what happened there. When al-Mansour, as we said, initially al-Saffah was the Khalifa. Al-Saffah lasted 4 to 5 years. He dies. He appoints his brother al-Mansour al-Dawaniqi to become the Khalifa after him. Al-Mansour harassed the Imam the entire time that he was a Khalifa, until the Imam was martyred, through different ways, and we don't have time to go through all of the details and all the stories that we have. Simply to say, he harassed the Imam in every which way that he could. And of course, he was initially in Iraq, Imam is in Medina. So at times when we say he summoned the Imam, he would make the Imam travel. And at times he would make the Imam travel to a place midway because he was on a trip, the Khalifa himself. And sometimes he would come to visit al-Medina and he would have these interactions with the Imam. In any case, so the different means and ways by which he harassed the Imam. First of all, he had spies live with the Imam and spend time in the house of the Imam and all around the Imam. There is no movement or word uttered by Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam in which there are no spies reporting and repeating every word back to the Khalifa. That's one. The second is that the Imam was put again and again under house arrest. And we have reports where people say, I came to see Imam al-Sadeq, I was told he's not allowed to see anyone, he's not allowed to talk to anyone. So the man pretends that he goes to a man selling cucumbers in the street. He buys his cart full of cucumbers so that he goes closer to the house of the Imam, pretending to be a man selling cucumbers so that he can talk to people around the house and ask his questions. He had questions about marriage and divorce and Islamic law. In any case, the Imam was jailed by the Abbasids. He was taken and put in jail physically and then taken out multiple times. The Imam was summoned. As we said, they would ask the Imam to come all the way. And in every way, he would try to find a way to humiliate the Imam further. Find a way to disrespect the Imam further. By this time, by the end of his life, we said the Imam is a man of over 60. And he's 62, 63, 65 years old. And a man in the rank and in the position of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam. And you would make him come to see him at any hour in the day or night. The Imam would sometimes ask the guards who would come, he would tell them, allow me to go wear my clothes so that I go in public. They say no. He said, you come as you are. And he would be taken that way. And every time he would be mad, and we are told that, and some of the companions of al-Mansour, they say he wanted to kill the Imam. He would often repeat, and we have this in history, he would say, I have killed over 1,000 Alawi. I have killed 1,000 of the descendants of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and yet I have left the most dangerous one right here. I have to kill him. But he was afraid to kill him because he thought there might be a backlash and they would lose their image in front of the people. So he wanted to get rid of him, and people sometimes were able to calm him down and sometimes not. In one incident, there's a man who says, he said, I swear I will kill him after he said those words. And the man said, I told him, this is a man who is old now. His body is weak. It's weakened by worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not interested in these things. He does not represent any threat to you. Why do you seek to kill him? And he was able to calm down with this. And other times the Imam himself would be brought and he would talk to al-Mansour and he was able to calm him down. But other times he was not to be calmed down at all. Al-Rabi', the wazir of al-Mansour, says we were traveling and al-Mansour told me, he made me swear that I would remember to tell him once we go back, that as soon as we go back, we kill the Imam. So he says, we went back from the trip, and as soon as we got there, I reminded him, you told me to remind you of the affair of Jafar ibn Muhammad. He's like, oh, ahsant, you did well. Let's summon the Imam, send the guards. And the Imam was summoned. And this was not the first time, he was summoned a few times. In this specific time, this is al-Rabi', this is in the books of history, this is himself talking, al-Rabi', the wazir of al-Khalifa. He says the Imam came, a nata' was placed. A nata' is a piece of leather that they would put, a large piece of leather, so that they execute people and then they carry the piece of leather outside with the body of the person. In other words, there is no court, there is no putting in jail to deal with him later. This is to kill the Imam live right there. And so he says, and I saw the Imam enter, and I saw al-Mansour himself get up and pull his sword out of his sheath, out of his covering, to go kill the Imam. And so the Imam, he says, he came towards him and I saw his lips move. He was uttering something. And then suddenly the state of al-Mansour changed. And al-Mansour brought the Imam and made him sit beside him. And he embraced him and they talked pleasantly, and then al-Imam left. He says, I ran after the Imam to talk to him and tell him, I swear to you he was going to kill you. What happened? I saw your lips moving. And so the Imam tells him, I simply uttered some words of protection, a dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he protected me this time. So he tells him, teach me those words, O son of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he tells him the words that I repeated in this instance, and there's a number of them. In this one he says, حسبي الرب من المربوبين حسبي الخالق من المخلوقين حسبي الله رب العالمين حسبي من هو حسبي, and until the end of the dua. And he taught the man that dua. In any case, these harassments continued non-stop to the Imam alayhi salam. The house of Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam was then burnt. He ordered his governor to burn the house of Imam al-Sadeq in Medina. His house was burned, and the Imam is the man himself who got up and extinguished the flames. And so some of his companions came later to see him in his house, and they saw the Imam sitting on the side, sad and crying. And they told him, why are you crying? This happens to you all the time. You are used to this harassment from these people, from these oppressors, you and your forefathers, there's no difference amongst you. Why did it impact you? Did something happen to any of you? None of them had been harmed. They told him, were you harmed by, are you sad that the house got burnt, and so on and so forth? The Imam said, no. This time the man was here, referring to himself, and there was water and we were able to extinguish the fire. But when I remember how Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, after he was killed and the fire and the flames were put to his tents, how his daughters and the women in his camp had to run from one tent to another, and there was no man and there was no water to get rid of that fire. So I remembered them. And then finally, Imam alayhi salam was poisoned. Al-Mansour ordered his governor to poison the Imam through some grapes and pomegranates, some rumman, and the Imam ate from that food and the poison started spreading in his body. The Imam left a wasiyah. There's a key in that wasiyah. The wasiyah that he left, the first wasiyah is that the Imam in his lifetime, and see how he protects his people and he protects his Shia. In his lifetime, he knew that there would be a threat. So the Imam left 5 executors, 5 awsiya. He said, when I die, these 5 people are going to execute my will. Who were they? Al-Mansour himself, al-Khalifa, al-Mansour. The governor of the city, Muhammad bin Sulaiman. Abdullah, his son, who is referred to as Abdullah al-Aftah. Musa, his son, Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, our Imam, and his wife Hamida, Sayyida Hamida, who was an incredible woman. Inshallah, one day we talk about her. After the Imam dies, news reaches al-Mansour. Al-Mansour tells the man who brings the news to him, he tells him, whoever, go find out whoever the Imam left to execute his will and execute them. I'm ending this story of Imamah. This whole account of one Imam leaving an Imam after him and constantly being a threat to our Khilafah, it ends now. We killed Imam al-Sadeq, let's kill whoever he left as his successor. The Imam had a number of sons. His son Ismail died in his own lifetime, and then now the Imam had a number of sons, so any of them could be the Imam. Whoever he left as the executor, go kill them. They went, they asked, they came back, they told him, he left you, O Khalifa, as a successor, and he left your governor of Medina as successor, and he left so and so and so. And he thought, and he's like, okay, just let it go. We'll leave it at that. And see how the Imam was protecting his people. And of course, the Khalifa and his governor can't be his real successors. And what remains is his wife, and his wife was a righteous woman, but she could not become an Imam because she's a woman. And then we have his 2 sons, Abdullah al-Aftah and Musa al-Kadhim. Inshallah, one day we'll talk about the story of Abdullah al-Aftah and how he tried to take over the Imamah. And the Imam had told, Imam al-Sadeq had told his son Imam al-Kadhim, when you will see your older brother. He claimed that he was the Imam because he was the older brother. When you'll see your older brother try to take over what is not his, don't dispute him over it. Let him be, for he will be the first to join me, the first to die after me. And we are told that he died 70 days after Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam, and yet there are still people who became al-Fathiyya and they followed Abdullah al-Aftah, as there were people who followed Imam Ismail, the son of Imam al-Sadiq, who died in the lifetime of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And then finally, let's end with this. The wife, one of the companions of the Imam, says that I came to visit the wife Hamida, Sayyida Hamida. I came to visit the wife of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and to console her after the martyrdom of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And when I came and she was crying, and I asked her about how he passed away, she said, I saw something amazing or something I hadn't seen before. And so she recounts, we are told how the Imam passes away, that the Imam lied in his bed, he extended his arms, he extended his feet or his legs, and he closed his eyes and he recited the Holy Quran until waiting for death. And then she says at some point, and he would faint, he would go in and out of consciousness because of the pain and the suffering that he has from the poison. And so at some point she says, the Imam opened his eyes and said, summon all of my household, call everyone who is of my family members right here. And so everybody rushed to the Imam at that time, and these were the last words of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam based on the hadith of Sayyida Hamida. She says, he said, لا تنال شفاعتنا مستخفا بصلاته. Our intercession does not include anyone who underestimates or belittles or disrespects his prayers. And he left. He departed from this world. Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam performed the rites of the death, and he wrapped Imam al-Sadeq alayhi salam in the 2 pieces of clothing that he would wear when he would perform al-Hajj. And he also put the imamah of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam with him in his grave. And they carried his holy body all the way to the cemetery of Baqiyah. And he was placed beside his father, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, his grandfather, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. And those graves are destroyed today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us contribute to the revolution of knowledge that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam began and led, and to rebuild the graves of Baqiyah, and to be of those who are worthy of the intercession of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in this world and the next. And we end by saying, inshallah, that we are worthy of carrying the title and the name of being Ja'fariyah and followers of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.